order of operations, or you might know it as PEMDAS, which is remembered with the phrase, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally," or something like that. It means do the parentheses first, then do exponents wherever you find them. Then multiplication and division are taken care of from left to right. And then finally additions and subtractions are taken care of from left to right in the order they appear. I'll do some examples later, but I want to explain to you first why this is the way it is, because it's quite possible that nobody ever explained it to you before. So, let's start with addition and subtraction. They're very simple, and they're the first things you learned in school. That's why they come last in the list, because they're the simplest, most primitive thing. When you learn multiplication and division, you learn multiplication first. They taught it to you, you may not remember it, but very simply as asking you first what 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is, or something like that. And you could add those up and get 12, right? But then they said, well, there's a shorter way to write that. 3 times 4. 4 times, having 3 4 times, in other words, which is what you have in that addition. And we also know that's equal to 12, of course. So this is a condensed form of addition. That's what multiplication is. Since it's a fancier form of addition, not so simple, it has to come first. If you think about 3 times 4 plus 5, you couldn't add 4 plus 5 first and get 9, because 3 times 4 means 12, or 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 5. And that has to equal 17. By the same token, exponents, and you may remember more fully that exponents are like 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is written 3 to the 4th, which calculates out to be 81. We could multiply all those 3's together and get 81. But if we put in our calculator 3 to the 4th power, we also get 81. A condensed form of multiplication. So that's why that has to come first. And the parentheses are just there to rearrange that order if you want, or if it's necessary for the problem. So let's do a couple examples that apply this to make sure you understand how to work it out. Okay, so here's the first example. It says negative 2 squared plus 3 cubed. So this negative sign, we have to be careful to remember that only when this negative is in parentheses, negative 2 is in parentheses there, do we square the negative sign. Written like this, the square happens first because it's the exponent. Negative happens afterwards because that is like multiplying by negative 1. Okay, multiplication comes after exponents. So we would write this as negative 4. Since there's a plus sign, we can go ahead and take care of this exponent 2. What's 3 to the 3rd power? That's 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. And then now we can add those two. What's negative 4 plus 27? That's like 27 minus 4, 23. So that's how we would apply the order of operations to that problem. Okay, moving on to the next one. What's 9 divided by 3 times 4? You may be tempted to multiply first because the M comes before the D in PEMDAS. Be sure to remember that they come in order of the way they are written. So we would do 9 divided by 3 first, which is 3 times 4, and then multiply 3 times 4 and get 12. That's very different from multiplying 3 and 4 and getting 12 and then dividing that into 9, which would get 3/4. A very different answer. So remember, it does go from left to right. Finally, a slightly more complicated problem. This has two sets of parentheses on the top, which we're going to have to simplify first. And this bar acts like parentheses too, so we have to simplify the whole top first to a single number before we divide by -3 in the end. So let's do the parentheses first. What's -3 plus the square root of 9? Well, the square root is like an exponent. We have to do that first. So the square root of 9 is 3. So let's write that step first. Just taking the square root of 9. We get 3. Then subtract. What's -4 plus 10.3? 10.3 minus 4 is 7.3. I'm sorry. I calculated that wrong in my head. Don't do that. Use your calculator. 6.3. And that's divided by -3. Okay? So what's -3 plus 3? Well, that's 0. Minus 6.3 is -6.3. 0 minus 6.3 is -6.3 divided by -3. And that final answer is a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So I don't need to write a plus sign. And 6.3 divided by 3. Do that on your calculator and you should get 2.1. And there's the answer for that one.